Thank you. So, thanks for the introduction. Hi, my name is Max, and I'm presenting Gamified Ads, bridging the gap between user enjoyment and the effectiveness of online ads, which is work I did together with Kathrin, Dernbecher, Vladislav, Hnatovskiy, Marc, Schubhan, Pascal, Lessel, and Krüger. So I think we all know online ads, and we all know that online ads are often disruptively competing for our attention and are not just annoying, but often provide a bad user experience. And therefore, more and more users install so-called ad blockers, which basically prevent ads from loading on a web page. This is, of course, good for users, because web services can then be accessed free of charge and free of advertisements, so without seeing any ads. But it's highly problematic for those web service providers, as they lose a quite big bunch of money every year because of ad block usage. So the current solution is that web services and internet platforms started excluding people using ad blockers from accessing the website. So, for example, here we see the Business Insider webpage, and it detects that you're using an ad blocker and shows you the message that you either have to pay or you deactivate your ad blocker right away. And we thought about whether this is really the best solution, or whether we could come up with something different. And we came up with the idea of gamified ads, which basically means to playfully deactivate ads as a way to bridge the gap between both interest groups like web service providers and users. And to start, we did brainstorming sessions to create eight game ideas to deactivate ads playfully, and we orientated on well-known games as this is a quite new approach. And we created storyboards to kind of visualize our ideas and present them to users early on. And I will now try to quickly go through all those 8 storyboards that we created. So the first one you can see on the left here is the Paintballs game idea. There the idea is that users can shoot paintballs to advertisements, and once the ad is fully covered in color splashes, it disappears. On the right side you see the monster game idea, where you have a virtual character, a monster that is eating ads, and once you drag them over ads, once you drag it over ads, it eats the ad, and the ad disappears, and you can get some virtual items for your monster. We also have a penguin game idea, where you got 30 seconds to guide the penguin to fishes to collect points, and then you need to try to not hit any ads on your way to collecting points, and once you've done that, all ads disappear on the web page. Then we have a Pac-Man game idea, where the idea is that you have a Pac-Man and you can eat up the ad using this Pac-Man and try to avoid hitting the ghosts. We also came up with a Tetris game idea, where you play the Tetris game, so to say, and once a row is cleared, the ad shrinks away until it's fully gone. We also got the Minesweeper game idea, where the ad is divided into a tile grid, and clicking Save Tiles removes the ad, while mile tiles can be flagged, and once you found the miles, the ad disappears as well. Also, we got the idea of using tokens, so this is kind of a way round. So here the ad is hidden by default, and once you click it, you can collect tokens that can be used to unlock, for example, news articles or special content on the website. And we got also a rival teams idea, where 2 rival teams are competing over web pages, can claim ads, and the current team that has the most ads claimed gets a website which is shown without any ads. And first of all, to make sure that our storyboards, as we wanted to use them for upcoming studies, are actually well understood, we did a storyboard validation online study with 20 participants, where participants were simply asked to describe what they can see on the storyboard. So please describe the game idea that is illustrated in the storyboard was the task that users were given. And we had 2 independent raters that went through these free text answers and had to rate them, whether participants really understood the game idea or whether they did not understand the game idea. And they could rate them from 1 to 3, where 1 means that they did not understand the game idea at all, and 3 means they fully understood what we are trying to say with the storyboard. Overall, we got a mean score of 2.78, which basically shows that most of the storyboards were actually well understandable, and that the 2 raters had a really high inter-rater agreement of code kappa of 0.94. So overall, this shows that our storyboards are well comprehensible. We had some minor issues that we fixed, but overall, the storyboards actually explain the intended concepts. After that, we did another pre-study with 50 participants to elicit requirements for implementation. So of course, we just did not want to come up with storyboards, but also implement some of them. And to kind of inform which storyboards shall be implemented, we did this pre-study to elicit requirements and also to get a rating of the perception of these game ideas from users. So users had 2 tasks in this study. The first task was to develop a game idea which has the goal to improve the perception of ads on a website, and users could also then type their game idea as a free text answer in our survey. And then they saw our kind of game ideas using the storyboards that we just validated and had to rate different items on 5-point Likert scales, like whether the game idea would enhance the perception of ads, whether they would like to play this game to deactivate ads, whether this game would be fun to play, and whether they would like the game idea. So first of all, coming to the requirements, here we did an inductive content analysis with 2 raters, and we found kind of 4 themes or requirements. So first of all, people described casual games, so most game concepts were using very simple rules and were easy to play. We also found that entertainment should be more important than effectiveness, which means that the main purpose should be entertainment and not the promotion of a brand or a product. They also should be unobtrusive, meaning that no ad-specific events like redirecting to another website should be triggered when playing the game. And the playtime should be short. So this means that games should not take long to complete. And with this in mind, we also had a look at which kind of game ideas were perceived significantly better than the neutral choice on a 5-point scale, so significantly better than the value 3. And we found that the Tetris game idea, the paintball game idea, and the monster game idea were perceived significantly better than the neutral choice, which is why we decided to implement them as a next step and kind of test them in a news website setting. So here's your short video. We created a dummy news website featuring different articles and categories, and within each article you have 1 ad, and you now see the implementation of the Tetris game idea. So you can press the play button, then of course you need to complete 1 row, so this to make sure that it's not too long, and then the ad disappears. You also got the paintball game concept. Here you're shooting color splashes at the ad, and once the ad is fully covered, it disappears as well. And last but not least, the monster game idea, where you drag a monster sitting on your browser screen over the ad. The monster then eats the ad and gets a virtual item which can be put on the monster. So, of course, we did a lab study then to investigate the effectiveness and user enjoyment of this approach. And as I said, we had this dummy news website, and we created fictitious advertisements, so for fictitious brands and products. And the study looked like this. So this is the procedure. Participants had to read the news article. Then they had to deactivate ad in one of 4 groups. Like we had one control group where they just had to click a close button. We had the Tetris game idea, the paintball game idea, and the monster game idea. And basically they had to repeat this for 3 articles. So our users were reading news articles and deactivating ads 3 times, and had to answer some comprehension questions about the article that they just read. Afterwards, we measured the user experience using the intrinsic motivation inventory and the user experience questionnaire. And then brand and product recall and recognition tests followed to investigate the effectiveness of our approach in terms of brand and product recall or recognition. And then we had a fake task. So here we said, okay, now we got another news article for you. And you're now free to choose whether you want to use an ad blocker or whether you want to stick to your current configuration. And we did that in order to kind of get a feeling whether participants like the game idea or whether they want to use a usual ad blocker. Of course, there was no 4th article, so we then said we just wanted to know that what kind of decision you would make. We had the following hypothesis. So first of all, we thought that playfully deactivating ads is more enjoyable, that less participants prefer using an ad blocker in the gamified conditions, and that brand and product recall or recognition should be higher in gamified conditions. We had more hypotheses and more dependent variables. You can find them in the paper. I will focus on these, as I think these are the most interesting ones. So first of all, coming to the first hypothesis, whether playfully deactivating ads is more enjoyable, we found that in the baseline condition, participants rated or gave a score of 9.0 on average on the EMI enjoyment subscale, whereas this significantly increased in the Tetris, in the paintball, as well as in the monster game concept, showing that Actually, all the game ideas provide a significantly more enjoying user experience than the control group. Then looking at whether less participants would prefer using an ad blocker in the gamified conditions, this relates to this fake task that I just talked about. So in the control group, 83% of users would like to use an ad blocker for the last task instead of clicking the close button. In the Tetris game idea, 67% of users wanted to use an ad blocker. In the Paintball game idea, 89% of users wanted to use an ad blocker. But now, in the Monster game idea, only 33% wanted to use an ad blocker, which means that 67% of users actually wanted to stick to this Monster game idea and keep on eating ads with the monster. So this hypothesis is supported only for the monster condition. Then we're looking at the effectiveness, so the brand recall. In the control group, participants were not able to recall any brand, so no brands were recalled at all. In the Tetris game idea, 0.28 brands were recalled on average out of 3. In the Paintball game idea, only 0.06, and in the Monster, 0.11. So we only found a significant effect for the Tetris game idea. Coming to brand recognition, we see that on average, participants recognized 1.28 brands out of 3 that they were shown, and this significantly increased basically for all game concepts. So in the Tetris, Paintball, and in the Monster game concept, this value is significantly increased, supporting the hypothesis for all game concepts that we had. Coming to product recognition, here we see that on average, people were able to recognize 2.28 out of 3 products in the baseline, and this significantly increased to 2.72 in the Tetris game idea, but no effects could have been found for the other 2 ideas or conditions. So coming to limitations and future work. So first of all, we did a lab study which should be considered. So we need to conduct in the wild studies, for example, by developing a browser extension, which is what we are currently doing. So if you had a look at our poster, you see the current progress that we made in the prototype of developing an ad blocker for the Chrome web browser. Also, deducing design guidelines for gamified ads could be worthwhile to consider, as well as conducting qualitative research to learn more about reasons for the effects that we found and how to integrate such an approach in the daily life of users. To conclude, we created game ideas for playfully deactivating ads and created storyboards for them. We validated those storyboards in the first online study with 20 participants. We did a perception study with 50 participants to kind of select which game ideas should be implemented. And we did a lab-based study with 72 participants where we were actually able to show that there are benefits in terms of enjoyment as well as brand and product recall and recognition. So with this, I'd like to conclude. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
So, questions for Max? Otherwise, okay. Maybe just quickly, I'm going to jump up here. Okay. So, I was quite curious about the different findings in terms of brand recall, brand recognition, product recognition. How do you explain those different effects?
So, I think, of course, the most hardest thing is, of course, brand recall, because we had brands that nobody knew, so we made up those brands, so it's not quite surprising that nobody could really recall brands. But I think the significant effects that we found could be explained by the interaction that you have with the ad. So if you interact with the ad, of course, and you do this when you play games up on then of course I could imagine that this explains why people had significantly more recall or recognition when interacting with them. So I think this is one main cause for these effects. Yeah.
Please.
Hello, my name is Abraham from University of Michigan. Thank you for the talk. I was wondering, because it seemed in your study it was basically like news ad and then like ad that took up like full screen or ad that took up like most of the attention. And I'm wondering how you viewed this gamification in like ads, sort of banner ads, or that are on the side of news articles, or that like aren't necessarily like blocking the content before you can access it.
So in our study we used banner ads. as these are actually still the most popular kind of advertisements. But of course, there are different ad formats that need to be considered, and we just focused on banner ads, and they were not really intrusive. So we did not really have pop-ups or something. It would be interesting to see how this, or how our approach actually works then. So in this prototype that we just implemented in this ad blocker for the Chrome browser, we are actually also able to handle pop-ups, and you just drag the monster. So we decided to go for the monster game concept, as this was the only one that was preferred over using an ad blocker, actually, as you can see here. And yeah, so here we are actually able to deal with different formats, but we still struggle, for example, with ads that are embedded into videos and all these kind of things. So this still needs some more work. Yeah.
Sergio Egelman, UC Berkeley. It's an interesting talk, but I guess one question I have is, without instructing participants in the wild, that the ads are interactive, don't you expect that people might be apprehensive to click on them for fear of having a new browser window pop open, or various privacy implications?
Yeah. So for this implementation of our ad blocker, we now have a kind of a small monster icon on all ads that we detected. So we are basically building upon the most popular ad blocker, AdBlock Plus extension, and we identify ads on the website, and we highlight those ads that can be interacted with a small icon. And as people get used to this interaction, they know that nothing bad is going to happen, because we won't kind of trigger any events on this ad when you drag your monster over the ad. So it's not like any ad-specific events or something is triggered when you drag the monster over the ad. So, yeah.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. So, otherwise, I have a follow-up question to my previous question. So I'm quite struck that overall, in terms of recall and recognition, Tetris does the best.
Yeah. So I think this is, as I said, I think it could be explainable with this interaction. So I think one kind of drawback of the paintball game idea, for example, is that you shoot onto the ad, which of course causes that you don't see the ad anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's not so surprising that we don't find many effects here. But on the Tetris game idea, it takes you quite some time that you have to look at. So I think it's the longest interaction in a way, mm-hmm. and therefore I think users kind of watch very long onto the ad and then maybe can recall and recognize brands and products mm-hmm. better than with the other two concepts, where it's pretty fast. So in the monster game idea, you also drag the monster over the ad mm-hmm. and it's gone in like 3 seconds or so. Mm-hmm. So I think this is explainable by the higher amount of interaction and higher mm-hmm. time of interaction. Yeah.
Right. Well, excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Please give Max another hand.